Marlo Quinn stood in the back room of Rosie's diner counting cash on a scratched metal table. 8 $1 bills, wrinkled soft from too many hands. She smoothed them flat with her palm one at a time like she was handling something sacred. Because in a way she was. These $8 were all that stood between her daughter and hunger tomorrow morning. The clock on the wall read 10 past 10. Her feet ached in worn sneakers with a hole forming in the left sole. She could feel the cold concrete through the thin fabric when she walked. But new shoes cost money she didn't have. Everything cost money she didn't have. Marlo folded the bills carefully and slipped them into her pocket. She'd worked an 8-hour shift. 5 tables had left tips. $2 here, $3 there. A quarter left under a coffee cup like an insult. She'd smiled through all of it. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Come back soon. Words that tasted like ash in her mouth, but words that kept a roof over their heads. She pulled on her jacket, a thin thing that did little against November in Portland, and stepped out into the parking lot. The diner's neon sign buzzed overhead, casting red light across the pavement. Rosie's, open 24 hours. She'd been coming through that door for 3 years now. Second shift 5 days a week. Before that, she worked mornings at the industrial laundry on Morrison Street, folding strangers' clothes for $11 an hour. Her hands still smelled like detergent, sometimes even hours after her shift ended. The walk home was 2 miles, 2 miles in the dark through neighborhoods that got quieter and emptier the farther she went. She kept her keys between her fingers just in case. Not that she had anything worth stealing, but fear didn't care about logic. Her mind wandered as she walked. It always did on these late-night treks. She thought about Iris, her 6-year-old daughter, asleep by now in the tiny apartment they shared. Iris with her blonde hair that needed cutting and her bright smile that could light up the darkest days. Iris who had asthma and whose inhaler sat on the kitchen counter with maybe 2 puffs left. $60 to refill it. $60 Marlo didn't have. She thought about the cabinet at home. 1 box of cereal almost empty, half a carton of milk in the fridge that would have to stretch for breakfast. She'd pour it for Iris in the morning, watch her eat, and pretend she wasn't hungry. That was the rhythm of their life. Marlo ate what was left. Marlo went without. Marlo carried the weight so Iris wouldn't have to. The rent was due in 3 days. She was $150 short. The landlord, a man named Pruitt with cold eyes and a mouth that never smiled, had already threatened eviction once. He'd stuck the notice to the door with duct tape like he wanted the whole building to see her shame. She'd pulled it down fast, crumpled it in her fist, but the words were burned into her memory. Final notice, vacate premises, no exceptions. Her car had broken down 3 weeks ago. Something with the transmission. The mechanic had quoted her $800. She'd laughed, not because it was funny, but because $800 might as well have been $8 million. So the car sat in the lot behind the apartment building, gathering dust and parking tickets she couldn't afford to pay. Now she walked everywhere. Miles to the laundromat, miles to the diner, miles home in the dark with holes in her shoes. Her feet had blisters that never fully healed. Just when the skin started to toughen, she'd walk another shift and break it open again. But Marlo didn't complain. Complaining was a luxury for people who had time to waste. She'd learned that lesson early. Her grandmother Vera had raised her after her mother disappeared when Marlo was 8, vanished one night and never came back. No note, no phone call, just gone. Vera had been a nurse working double shifts at the county hospital, coming home exhausted, but never too tired to make sure Marlo had eaten, had done her homework, had someone who cared. Vera used to say kindness costs nothing. She'd say it while helping neighbors who couldn't pay their bills, while staying late with patients who had no family, while giving her last $20 to a stranger on the street. Kindness is the only debt worth carrying, she'd tell Marlo. You pay it forward, always forward. Marlo had been 12 when Vera died. A stroke. She collapsed on a sidewalk downtown during her lunch break. People walked past her, dozens of people. Some glanced, some didn't. No one stopped. By the time someone finally called for help, it was too late. The paramedics said she'd been lying there for almost an hour. An hour. 60 minutes while the city moved around her like she was invisible. That was 20 years ago, but Marlowe remembered it like yesterday, the phone call from the hospital, the social worker with a gentle voice explaining what happened, the funeral with 11 people in attendance. Vera, who had helped hundreds, died alone on a sidewalk because no one thought to stop. Marlowe carried that with her, the weight of it, the unfairness of it. And she'd made herself a promise at that funeral standing in front of a casket she couldn't afford, but somehow Vera's church had paid for. She promised she'd never walk past someone who needed help, no matter what it cost her. She kept a journal by her bed, a small notebook with a cracked spine. Every night, no matter how hard the day had been, she wrote 3 things she was grateful for. It was something Vera had taught her. Gratitude keeps you human, baby girl. When you got nothing left, you still got gratitude. Tonight's entry would be simple. 1, Iris is healthy. 2, I have work tomorrow. 3, we still have a home. For now. Marlowe turned the corner onto her street. The apartment building loomed ahead, a squat brick structure with peeling paint and a broken light above the entrance. Home. She climbed the stairs to the second floor, stepping over a stain on the landing she didn't want to identify. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and something sour she couldn't place. Mrs. Calloway's door was across from hers. The older woman had lived in this building for 30 years, had seen it decay from something decent into this. She was kind, though. She watched Iris sometimes when Marlowe's shifts ran long. Didn't ask for much, just company and someone to talk to. Marlowe unlocked her door as quietly as she could. The apartment was dark except for a small lamp in the living room. Mrs. Calloway sat on the couch asleep, her head tilted back and her mouth slightly open. Iris was curled up next to her, a blanket pulled up to her chin. Marlowe stood there for a moment just watching them. Her daughter, her neighbor, 2 people who depended on her in different ways. She felt the weight of those $8 in her pocket, felt the impossibility of making them stretch far enough. She gently shook Mrs. Calloway's shoulder. The older woman's eyes fluttered open. She smiled when she saw Marlowe. "I'm home, thank you so much." Mrs. Calloway nodded, pushing herself up from the couch with a soft groan. "That girl's an angel. Read me 3 stories tonight." Marlowe smiled. "She does love her books." Mrs. Calloway shuffled to the door, then paused. "You working tomorrow?" "Both jobs. You work too hard, honey. No such thing when you got a kid to feed." Mrs. Calloway squeezed her hand. "You're doing good. Don't let anyone tell you different." Marlowe watched her cross the hall and disappear into her own apartment. Then she turned to Iris, carefully lifting her daughter and carrying her to the bedroom they shared. The girl stirred slightly, murmuring something in her sleep. Marlowe laid her down on the small bed, pulled the blanket up, and kissed her forehead. "I love you, baby," she whispered. In the kitchen, she opened the cabinet. The cereal box was lighter than she remembered. She shook it. Maybe enough for 1 bowl. She checked the fridge. The milk carton had just enough left if she measured carefully. Breakfast for Iris. That's what mattered. Marlowe sat at the small table and pulled out her journal. The pen was running out of ink, but it still worked if she pressed hard enough. She wrote slowly, forming each letter with care. 1. Iris is healthy and safe. 2. Mrs. Calloway is a blessing. 3. Tomorrow is a new day. She closed the journal and stared at the $8 she placed on the table. $8. It had to cover the bus fare to work. $2. That left $6. She needed to save at least $4 for the rent she still owed. That left $2. $2 for Iris's breakfast if the cereal and milk weren't enough. Maybe a banana from the corner store. Maybe a small carton of juice. The math never worked. That was the cruel joke of poverty. The numbers never added up, no matter how many times you ran them. But you did it anyway. You tried anyway. Because what else was there? Marlowe folded the bills and put them back in her pocket. Then she walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair that needed washing. Skin pale from too many hours indoors and not enough food. 32 years old, and she looked 40. But she was still standing. That counted for something. Or she brushed her teeth with a toothbrush that needed replacing and changed into the oversized t-shirt she slept in. Then she climbed into bed next to Iris, careful not to wake her. The mattress sagged in the middle. Springs poked through in places, but it was warm and her daughter was next to her, breathing softly in sleep. Marlo closed her eyes. Tomorrow would start at 5 in the morning. The alarm would go off, and she'd drag herself out of bed, make breakfast for Iris, walk her to Mrs. Calloway's before school, then catch the bus to the laundromat. 8 hours of folding clothes. Then a quick walk to the diner for the evening shift. Then home again in the dark. The same routine, day after day, week after week. Surviving but barely. One missed shift away from disaster. One unexpected bill away from losing everything. But she'd made it this far. She'd keep making it. For Iris. Always for Iris. Sleep came slowly the way it always did when worry chewed at the edges of her mind. But eventually exhaustion won, and Marlo drifted off, her hand resting on her daughter's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breathing. The alarm screamed at 5 in the morning. Marlo's hand shot out, slapping it silent before it could wake Iris. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, gathering the will to move. Her body ached, her feet throbbed. But the day didn't care about pain. She pulled herself up and shuffled to the kitchen. The cereal box sat on the counter like an accusation. She poured what was left into a bowl, not bothering to measure. It was less than she'd hoped. She added the milk, watching it barely cover the cereal. This was breakfast. This was what $8 bought. Iris appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Her blonde hair stuck up in the back. She wore pajamas with cartoon characters that were too small, now the sleeves riding up her wrists. "Morning, Mommy? Morning, baby?" Iris climbed into her chair and looked at the bowl. She didn't complain. She never did. She just picked up her spoon and started eating slow and careful, like she was trying to make it last. Marlo didn't make anything for herself. She poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her daughter eat. Iris looked up between bites and smiled. That smile. It broke Marlo's heart and put it back together all at once. "You working today, Mommy?" "Yes, baby. Both jobs." "When will you be home late?" "But Mrs. Calloway will make you dinner, okay?" Iris nodded. She was used to this, too used to it. 6 years old and already fluent in the language of absence. After Iris finished, Marlo helped her get dressed, packed her small backpack with a notebook and 2 pencils, and walked her across the hall. Mrs. Calloway answered on the second knock, already dressed and ready. "Morning, sweetheart," she said to Iris, opening the door wide. "Come on in. We'll get you to school in just a bit." Marlo kissed Iris on the head. "Be good. I always am. I know you are." She watched them disappear inside, then turned and headed down the stairs. The morning air was cold, biting through her thin jacket. She pulled it tighter and started walking. The laundromat was 45 minutes on foot. She could have taken the bus, but that was $2 she needed for later. So she walked, her breath misting in the November air, her feet already aching in those worn-out shoes. Morrison Street Industrial Laundry sat between an auto repair shop and a convenience store with bars on the windows. The building was old, the paint flaking, the windows fogged with steam from the machines inside. Marlo pushed through the door at 6:55, 5 minutes early like always. Dottie was already there, loading a dryer with white sheets. She was 58, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and hands that shook slightly from years of repetitive work. She'd worked at this laundromat for 23 years. She'd seen girls like Marlo come and go. Most didn't last. "Morning, honey," Dottie said without looking up. "Morning. You look tired. Always tired." Dottie smiled, but it was sad. "I know that feeling." Marlo clocked in and got to work. The rhythm was mindless. Pull wet laundry from the washer, shake it out, load the dryer, wait, unload, fold, stack, repeat. Hours of it. The steam made the room hot and damp. Sweat ran down her back. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind drifted. She thought about Iris's inhaler, about the rent, about the $8 in her pocket that had to somehow cover the rest of the week. The math ran through her head on a loop, an equation with no solution. Lunch break came at noon. Marlo sat in the back room with a cup of coffee and nothing else. Dottie unwrapped a sandwich and offered half. Marlo shook her head. I'm fine. You got to eat, honey. I'll eat later. That's what you said yesterday. Marlo didn't answer. Dottie sighed but didn't push. They sat in silence, two women who understood the unspoken language of barely getting by. At 2 in the afternoon, Marlo clocked out. She'd earned $88 for the day. It would go toward the rent, toward the bills, toward the endless list of things that needed paying. She walked the mile and a half to Rosie's Diner, arriving at 2:45. Her shift didn't start until 3, but she liked to get there early. Catch her breath, drink a coffee, sit for 10 minutes before the next grind began. The diner was busy, always was. Truckers stopping for a meal, families with screaming kids, teenagers eating fries and taking up booths for hours. Marlo tied on her apron and got to work. Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get you? More coffee when you get a chance. Coming right up. The hours blurred, orders taken, plates delivered, coffee refilled, smile, no, thank you. Come back soon. Her feet screamed, her back ached, but she kept moving because stopping meant thinking and thinking meant drowning. At 10 o'clock, her shift ended. She counted her tips in the back room. $23, better than yesterday. Not good enough, but better. She added it to the $8 from her pocket. $31 total. She tucked 23 away for rent. That left 8. Again. Always 8. She said goodbye to Dottie, who was working the late shift, and stepped out into the night. The air had gotten colder. A light mist hung in the air, not quite rain, but enough to soak through her jacket after a while. Marlo started the walk home. 2 miles. She'd walked this route so many times she could do it with her eyes closed. Past the pawn shop with the flickering sign, past the liquor store with men smoking outside, past the empty lot filled with trash and broken glass. She was tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. But she kept walking one foot in front of the other because that's what you did. You kept going. There was no other choice. Halfway home, she decided to cut through the Sunset gas station parking lot. There was a restroom there, and she needed to stop. The station was mostly empty at this hour, just a few cars at the pumps. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered and buzzed, casting harsh shadows across the pavement. Marlo pushed open the restroom door. It was grimy, the floor sticky, the mirror cracked. She washed her hands with soap that barely lathered and dried them on her jeans because the paper towel dispenser was empty. When she stepped back outside, she saw him. A man, massive, at least 6'3", with broad shoulders and arms covered in tattoos. He wore a black leather vest with patches all over it. Even from a distance, Marlo could see the skull logo. Hell's Angels. She'd heard stories about guys like him. Everyone had. Dangerous. Criminals. Stay away. He was leaning against a chrome motorcycle parked under one of the lights. His back was to her. She started walking toward the street, minding her own business, keeping her head down. Then he stumbled. His hand shot to his chest. His face twisted in pain. He dropped to one knee, gasping for air. Marlo stopped. Froze. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to keep walking. This wasn't her problem. She had Iris to think about. She had enough trouble in her own life without inviting more. But then the man collapsed, flat on his back on the pavement. His breathing came in short, desperate gasps. His lips were turning blue. She heard it then, the sound that made her blood run cold. His chest stopped moving. He wasn't breathing anymore. Hey! Marlo's voice came out louder than she intended. Hey, someone call 911. The gas station attendant stepped out from inside. A white guy in his 30s with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He looked at the man on the ground, then at Marlo. Lady, you crazy. That's a Hell's Angel. Leave him alone. He's probably high on something. He's having a heart attack, Marlo said, her voice rising. Call an ambulance. The attendant shrugged. Not our problem. Those guys are nothing but trouble. Trust me, you don't want to get involved. An older man, maybe 60, wearing a trucker hat, walked out of the store with a bag of chips. He saw the scene and shook his head. He walked over to Marlo and gently grabbed her arm. Miss, listen to me. Don't get involved. People like that, they're dangerous. You've got a kid to think about, don't you? I can tell. Just walk away. Marlo pulled her arm back. A man is dying. The trucker shook his head, again muttered something under his breath, and walked to his car. He drove off without looking back. The attendant flicked his cigarette and went back inside, leaving Marlo alone in the parking lot with a dying man. She stood there, torn, terrified. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. Kindness costs nothing, baby girl. In the other memory, Vera lying on that sidewalk, people walking past, no one stopping. Marlo dropped to her knees beside him. Sir, sir, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. Barely. He tried to speak, but only a wheeze came out. Heart, meds, forgot. Marlo pulled out her phone. 1 bar of signal, 10% battery. She dialed 911. The call dropped. Damn it. She stood up and ran toward the gas station, burst through the door. The attendant looked up from his magazine, annoyed. Call an ambulance right now. He's dying out there. The attendant rolled his eyes but picked up the phone behind the counter. Marlo didn't wait. She scanned the shelves. Aspirin? There. She grabbed a bottle and a bottle of water, ran to the counter and slammed them down. How much? $6.50. Marlo pulled the $8 from her pocket. Her last $8. Iris's breakfast money. She handed it over. The attendant gave her $1.50 in change. She didn't wait for a receipt. She ran back outside. The man was still on the ground, barely conscious. Marlo twisted the cap off the aspirin bottle, shook 2 tablets into her hand, opened the water, and knelt beside him. Hey, look at me. I need you to chew these. Can you do that? He opened his mouth weakly. She placed the tablets on his tongue. Chew. Come on. He chewed slowly, wincing. She held the water bottle to his lips, and he took a small sip. Help is coming. You're going to be okay. Just stay with me. His hand reached up and grabbed hers. His grip was weak, but it was there. What's your name? He whispered, his voice barely audible. Marlo Quinn. Marlo, he coughed. You saved my life. Not yet, but I'm trying. In the distance, sirens wailed. They were getting closer. Then out of nowhere, another motorcycle roared into the parking lot. A younger guy, maybe 30, jumped off and ran over. He wore the same vest. Forge. Oh my God, Forge. He dropped to his knees on the other side of the man. He looked at Marlo, his eyes wide with shock. You helped him? He needed help. The younger guy stared at her like she'd just done something impossible. Most people cross the street when they see us. Marlo didn't respond. She just kept her hand on Forge's shoulder until the ambulance pulled into the lot. The paramedics rushed over with a stretcher and equipment. One of them looked at Marlo. Did you give him aspirin? Yes. 2 tablets, maybe 3 minutes ago. The paramedic nodded. Smart move. You probably just saved his life. They loaded Forge onto the stretcher. He reached out and grabbed Marlo's wrist one more time, his eyes locked on to hers. Tell them Forge sent you. She had no idea what that meant. The younger guy stood up as the ambulance doors closed. He walked over to Marlo and pulled a business card from his wallet. It was plain white with just a phone number and a small logo. A crown with wings. My name's Cole. Forge is going to want to thank you. Please call this number tomorrow. Marlo took the card, her hand shaking. Who is he? Cole smiled, but there was something heavy in his expression. Someone important. Someone who doesn't forget kindness. The ambulance pulled away, sirens blaring. The gas station attendant stood in the doorway, arms crossed, shaking his head. Marlo stood alone in the parking lot with $1.50 in her pocket and no idea what she'd just done. She walked home in the dark, replaying everything. The attendant's words echoed in her mind. Those guys are nothing but trouble. But all she'd seen was a man who needed help. Had she made a mistake? She didn't know yet, but she was about to find out. By the time she got home, it was nearly 1 in the morning. Mrs. Calloway was asleep on the couch with Iris curled up beside her. Marlowe gently shook the older woman awake. "I'm home. Thank you so much." Mrs. Calloway nodded groggy and shuffled out. Marlowe carefully lifted Iris and carried her to bed. The girl stirred slightly. "Mommy, shh. Go back to sleep, baby. I love you, Mommy. I love you too." Marlowe tucked the blanket around her daughter and kissed her forehead. Then she walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the small table. She pulled the business card out of her pocket and stared at it. The crown with Wings logo glinted under the dim overhead light. She turned it over. Nothing on the back, just a phone number. Who were these people? She looked at the $1.50 sitting on the table. Tomorrow, Iris would wake up and ask for breakfast, and Marlowe would have to tell her they'd have crackers and water. Nothing else, because she'd spent her last $8 on a stranger. She pulled out her journal and opened to a blank page. The pen scratched across the paper. 1. Iris is healthy. 2. I helped someone tonight. 3. Tomorrow is a new day. She closed the journal and looked at the business card again. Then she set it on the nightstand beside her bed and lay down exhausted. She closed her eyes. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring. She had no idea that across town in a hospital room, Forge was telling Cole to gather everyone. She had no idea that her name was being spoken in rooms she'd never seen by people she'd never met. All she knew was that she'd done the right thing. And sometimes that's all you can do, even when it costs you everything. The next morning came too soon. The alarm went off at 5 and Marlowe dragged herself out of bed. Her body ached worse than usual. Every muscle protested, but the day didn't care. She walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet. One sleeve of crackers. That was it. She poured them onto a plate and added a glass of water. This was breakfast. Iris came padding out in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Mommy. What's for breakfast?" Marlowe forced a smile. "A special breakfast today, baby. Crackers and water. Your favorite." Iris didn't complain. She never did. She climbed into her chair and started eating slow and careful. Marlowe sat across from her, watching, trying not to think about the $8, trying not to think about what came next. Then came a knock at the door. Marlowe frowned. It was barely 7 in the morning. Who would be knocking this early? She opened the door. Mrs. Calloway stood there, her arms crossed, and a deep frown on her face. "Marlowe, baby, we need to talk." "Good morning, Mrs. Calloway. Is everything okay?" Mrs. Calloway stepped closer and lowered her voice. "I heard you helped one of those biker thugs last night, one of those Hell's Angels." Marlowe's stomach dropped. How did she know? He was having a heart attack. "Mrs. Calloway, I had to." "Child, those Hell's Angels are criminals. Drugs, violence, all kinds of mess. What were you thinking? You got Iris to think about. He was a human being who needed help. That's all I saw." Mrs. Calloway shook her head, disappointment written all over her face. "You're too kind for your own good, Marlowe. That kindness is going to get you hurt one day. Mark my words." She turned and walked back to her apartment, leaving Marlowe standing in the doorway. Marlowe closed the door slowly and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking. Had she made a mistake? She looked at Iris, still eating her crackers, completely unaware of the conversation that had just happened. Marlowe forced herself to breathe. "Finish up, baby. Time to get ready." She walked Iris to Mrs. Calloway's apartment, the tension hanging thick in the air. The older woman took Iris without much more than a nod. Marlowe kissed her daughter goodbye and headed to work. The laundromat, 8 hours of folding. Her mind kept replaying Mrs. Calloway's words. "That kindness is going to get you hurt." Over and over, a loop she couldn't escape. During her break, she pulled out the business card. She stared at the crown with Wings logo, turning it over in her fingers. She pulled out her phone and typed a text message to the number on the card. "Hi, this is Marlowe Quinn. Cole gave me this number." She hit send before she could change her mind. Within seconds, her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. A minute later, she listened to the message. "Marlowe, it's Cole. Forge wants to meet you today. Can you come to Murphy's Diner on 5th Street at 3 p.m.? It's important, please. Marlowe's heart pounded. Dottie leaned over. What did they say? They want to meet me this afternoon, then go. What's the worst that could happen? Free coffee. Marlowe tried to smile, but her stomach was in knots. She was off work at 2. She could make it to the diner by 3. But what would people think? What would Mrs. Calloway say if she found out? As she left the laundromat that afternoon, she noticed something. 2 motorcycles parked across the street, 2 men in vests watching. When she looked at them, they nodded respectfully. Then they rode off. Marlowe stood on the sidewalk, her heart racing. What had she walked into? And more importantly, could she walk back out? She took the bus to 5th Street. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. As the bus turned the corner, she saw them. Motorcycles, dozens of them, parked in perfect rows outside Murphy's Diner, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Her stomach dropped. The bus stopped. Marlowe almost stayed in her seat. Almost. But something made her stand up and walk toward that diner. Bikers lined the sidewalk. Big men with tattoos and gray beards. Women 2 arms crossed, standing tall, all wearing vests with patches. They weren't loud. They weren't threatening. They were waiting. As Marlowe walked past, each one nodded to her. One older man tipped his cap. Marlowe's heart pounded. What did that mean? She reached the door, took a breath, and walked inside. Every booth and table was filled with bikers. The diner was dead silent. Every single person turned and looked at her. Cole appeared from the back, smiling. Marlowe, thank you for coming. Forge is waiting. As they walked through the diner, something incredible happened. The bikers stood up, one by one. As she passed, they rose to their feet like a wave moving through the room. Marlowe had no idea what it meant, but it felt sacred. Cole led her to a corner booth. Forge sat there looking better than last night, though still pale. When he saw her, he stood slowly, wincing slightly. Marlowe Quinn, please sit. She slid into the booth. Forge studied her for a long moment. How are you feeling? I'm fine. How are you? Doctor said if you hadn't acted fast, I'd be dead. Heart attack. Massive one. I'm just glad you're okay. Forge leaned forward. Cole told me everything. You wouldn't take money. You've got a daughter. 2 jobs. You used your last $8 to save my life. Marlowe shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't about money. I know. That's why I wanted to meet you. He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. A younger Forge stood beside a woman. Between them was a little girl, maybe 7, with bright eyes and a huge smile. That's my daughter. Her name was Lily. Was Marlowe's throat tightened? Leukemia. She was 7. We couldn't afford the treatments fast enough. By the time we got the money, it was too late. I'm so sorry. Forge's jaw tightened. After she died, I made a promise. Anyone who shows real kindness, especially when they've got nothing, I help them. It's what Lily would have wanted. Marlowe didn't know what to say. Tomorrow morning, something's going to happen. Don't be scared. Just trust me. What do you mean? Forge smiled. You'll see. He stood, shook her hand, left cash on the table, and walked out with Cole. Marlowe sat alone, surrounded by silent bikers, completely lost. An older biker leaned over. You did good, miss. Real good. She had no idea what he meant. Marlowe rode the bus home that evening with a pit in her stomach. Forge's words echoed in her mind. Tomorrow morning, something's going to happen. Don't be scared. What did that mean? The bikers standing when she walked by. The silent respect. The way Cole had looked at her like she'd done something extraordinary. All she'd done was help someone. That was it. Back on Marlowe Street, the neighborhood buzzed with talk. Mrs. Calloway stood on her porch with Mr. Whitmore, a man in his 40s from 3 doors down, an electrician with calloused hands and a permanent scowl. That girl Marlowe is mixed up with those bikers now. Mrs. Calloway said, I told her no good would come of it. Mr. Whitmore frowned. Hell's angels on our street. We got to do something, a young mother Paige overheard from her doorway. I'm keeping my kids inside tomorrow. Word spread fast. By dinner time, the whole block was on edge. Parents warned their children. Curtains stayed drawn, doors stayed locked. No one knew what was coming, but everyone was afraid. And Marlo, she sat in her apartment with Iris wondering if she just made the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning came with a sound like thunder, deep, rumbling, shaking the windows. Marlo woke with a start. The sound grew louder. Engines, multiple engines. She rushed to the window and looked out. Her street was lined with motorcycles, hundreds of them, chrome gleaming in the morning light, black vests, bikers standing in perfect formation. Oh my God. Iris ran in her eyes wide. Mommy, why are there so many motorcycles? Marlo had no answer. She threw on clothes and rushed outside with Iris clinging to her hand. The entire neighborhood had come out, but they weren't curious. They were terrified. Windows slammed shut, doors locked. Parents pulled children inside. Mrs. Calloway stood on her porch with her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, police. There's a gang on our street. Send someone now. Mr. Whitmore ran toward Marlo, his face red with anger. Marlo, what did you do? Why are they here? You brought a gang to our street? Our kids live here. Other neighbors gathered, voices rising. What were you thinking I told you? Mrs. Calloway shouted. I warned you. The crowd pressed closer. Angry faces, pointing fingers. Marlo pulled Iris closer, hands shaking. Mommy, I'm scared. It's okay, baby. But Marlo didn't know if it was. Cole stepped forward from the line of bikers, his hands raised. Folks, we're not here to cause trouble. Then why are you here? Mr. Whitmore shouted. We're here to help one of your own. Marlo saved a life 2 nights ago. Now we're here to save hers. Silence fell over the crowd. A trailer truck pulled up behind the motorcycles. Bikers started unloading boxes. Cole turned to face the crowd again. My name is Cole. I'm a volunteer with Lily's Legacy, a nonprofit that helps struggling families. The man Marlo saved is our founder. He started Lily's Legacy after his daughter died of leukemia. We've helped over 3,000 families in 20 years. We raise money, build homes, pay medical bills. Mr. Whitmore's face changed. Wait, Lily's Legacy. You helped my brother, Thomas Whitmore, Army veteran with PTSD. You paid for his therapy. Cole nodded. Yes, sir. We remember Thomas. A woman gasped. You paid for my son's heart surgery 2 years ago. Tyler, he's alive because of you. Another voice from the crowd. You saved my sister's house from foreclosure. The atmosphere shifted. Fear turned to understanding. Confusion gave way to recognition. Mrs. Calloway's hand covered her mouth. Lord, we judged you all wrong. Forge stepped out of the truck, moving slowly. His color was better, but he still looked weak. The crowd parted as he walked toward Marlo. He turned to face the neighbors. I get it. You saw the jackets, the bikes, the tattoos. You got scared. That's human. He pointed to Marlo. But this woman didn't see any of that. She saw a man dying and used her last $8, her daughter's breakfast money, to save my life. Complete silence. You could hear the wind moving through the trees. She didn't know who I was. Didn't care. She just saw a human being who needed help. That's the world I'm trying to build, where people see people, not stereotypes. Mr. Whitmore stepped forward, his eyes wet. I judged you by your jacket, not your heart. I was wrong, I'm sorry. He extended his hand. Forge shook it firmly. We all make mistakes, sir. What matters is what we do after. One by one, neighbors approached, apologizing, shaking hands, hugging. Mrs. Calloway walked to Marlo and pulled her into an embrace. Baby, I'm so sorry I doubted you. Forge turned back to Marlo. You gave me a second chance at life. Let me give you one too. He handed her an envelope. Marlo opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a check, $25,000. She stared at it, unable to process the numbers, her vision blurred with tears. For rent, medical bills, whatever you need. There was more. A letter on official letterhead. Lily's Legacy offers you the position of Community Outreach Director. Salary $52,000 per year. Full benefits. Health insurance for you and Iris. Start in 2 weeks. Marlo's knees buckled. She dropped to the pavement sobbing. Iris knelt beside her. Mommy, why are you crying? Happy tears, baby. Happy tears. The neighbors erupted in applause. Some cried too. Engines revved. A thunderous celebration echoing down the street. Mrs. Calloway helped Marlo to her feet. You showed us how to be better. All of us. Forge knelt beside Marlo, wincing slightly from the effort. One more thing. He pulled out a car key. We got your car from the lot. Fully repaired. New transmission. It's around the corner. Marlo looked up, her face streaked with tears. Why all this? Forge's eyes glistened. 20 years ago, my daughter died because we didn't have enough money fast enough. I swore I'd never let that happen to another family if I could help it. You saved my life with your last dollars. Didn't hesitate. Didn't ask for anything. That's who the world needs. That's who I need. I'm nobody special. You're wrong. You're exactly who we've been looking for. Cole stepped forward. There's more. Come look. He led her to the trailer. Inside furniture. A bed for Iris with a frame and a real mattress. Groceries, toys, school supplies, clothes in Iris's size. Marlo laughed through her tears, a sound caught between disbelief and joy. This is too much. It's not enough, Forge said. But it's a start. The bikers began unloading. The neighbors, terrified just an hour ago, stepped forward to help. Mr. Whitmore grabbed a box. Where do you want this? Mrs. Calloway directed traffic. Careful with that bed frame. Paige, the young mother who'd locked her kids inside, now had them helping carry toys up the stairs. The entire street came together. Fear and prejudice transformed into community and love. Forge stood beside Marlo as the work continued. Tomorrow we start planning the community center, right here in this neighborhood. A community center, Quinn House, named after you. Marlo shook her head, crying again. You can't. I can, and I am. Iris tugged her mother's hand. Mommy, they brought me a bike, a real bike. Marlo looked at her daughter's face. Pure joy. No fear, no worry, just happiness. And something inside Marlo broke open. For the first time in years, she felt real hope. 2 weeks later, Marlo walked into the Lily's Legacy office for her first day. The building was small but clean, a converted storefront on the east side of Portland. Inside, 3 desks, file cabinets, a coffee maker that looked older than Marlo, posters on the walls showing families they'd helped. Cole was waiting for her. Welcome to the team. I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. Come meet everyone. He led her to the back room. 2 people sat at a table reviewing files. A young man, maybe 28, with short brown hair and a scar above his left eyebrow, and a woman in her mid-30s with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair. This is Devin, former Army, homeless for 2 years after he got out. Lily's Legacy got him housing and a job. Now he's one of our best coordinators. Devin stood and shook her hand. His grip was firm. Welcome, Marlo. Heard what you did for Forge. That took guts. The woman stood next. I'm Nora, single mom. My ex put me in the hospital 3 times before I got out. Lily's Legacy helped me get on my feet. Been working here 5 years now. Marlo felt a lump in her throat. You all came from this. We all came from somewhere hard, Devin said. That's what makes us good at what we do. We remember. Forge appeared in the doorway. Ready to get started, Marlo nodded. More ready than I've ever been. They spent the morning going over cases, families who'd applied for help. Each file was a story, a struggle, a need. This is Margaret Patterson, 80 years old. Can't afford her heart medication. Been cutting pills in half to make them last. Forge slid the file to Marlo. What do you think we should do? Get her the medication. Full 3 months supply. Good. What else? Marlo thought for a moment. Check if she needs help with anything else. Food. Utilities. Sometimes one problem hides 10 others. Forge smiled. Exactly right. Devin, you want to take Marlowe on this one? Devin grabbed his jacket. Let's go meet Mrs. Patterson. They drove across town in Devin's truck. He told her about his time in the army, 3 tours, Iraq and Afghanistan, came home with nightmares and no one to talk to, ended up on the streets because he couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. Lily's legacy found me in a shelter. Forge sat with me for 2 hours, didn't try to fix me, just listen. Then he got me into a program, got me therapy, got me housing, saved my life. Marlowe looked out the window. He seems to do that a lot. Yeah, he does. They pulled up to a small house with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. Devin knocked. An elderly woman answered. White hair, glasses, a cardigan despite the warmth. Mrs. Patterson, I'm Devin from Lily's Legacy. This is Marlowe. We'd like to talk to you about your medication. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. Please come in. Her living room was neat but sparse. Furniture from decades ago. Photos of children and grandchildren on the mantel. She sat in a worn armchair and gestured for them to sit. I don't know what to say. I've been praying for help. Devin pulled out a folder. We're going to cover your heart medication. Full prescription. No cost to you. Mrs. Patterson began to cry. I can't afford it. I've been so scared. You don't have to be scared anymore, Marlowe said gently. We're here to help. They spent an hour with her, learned she also needed help with her electric bill, that her roof leaked, that she hadn't seen a dentist in 5 years because she couldn't afford it. We'll take care of all of it, Devin said. On the drive back, Marlowe was quiet. Devin glanced over. You okay? I just gave that woman hope. Real hope. I've never felt anything like that. Gets you every time. Wait until you see her face next month when everything's fixed. Over the next 2 weeks, Marlowe threw herself into the work. She visited families, reviewed applications, made phone calls. Each case was different. Each one mattered. An elderly couple who couldn't afford heating, a disabled veteran who needed a wheelchair ramp, a single father who'd lost his job and was 3 months behind on rent. She helped them all. Or rather, Lily's Legacy helped them all. And with each family, Marlowe felt a piece of herself heal. The part that had been broken by poverty, by struggle, by watching her daughter go hungry while she worked herself to exhaustion. This was purpose. This was meaning. But not everyone saw it that way. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Plain white envelope. No return address. Marlowe opened it at her desk, inside a single sheet of paper, typed, anonymous. Unqualified single mom playing savior. You don't deserve this job. You're a fraud. Marlowe's hands shook. She crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. But 2 days later, another one came. Hell's Angels using charity to launder money. You're their pawn. Then another. Quinn doesn't belong here. She's going to fail and hurt the people who trust her. Marlowe tried to ignore them, tried to focus on the work, but the words burrowed into her mind. Unqualified. Fraud. Going to fail. She started second-guessing herself. Every decision felt wrong. Every case felt like she was in over her head. The imposter syndrome that had lurked in the background roared to life. Then the article came out. From diner to director, is Marlowe Quinn qualified? Written by Vanessa Hale, a reporter for the Portland Tribune. The article questioned everything. Marlowe's lack of education, her lack of experience. It called Lily's Legacy's decision to hire her reckless. Nepotism disguised as charity. The online comments were worse. This is what's wrong with nonprofits, hiring friends instead of professionals. She saved one guy and thinks she can run a foundation unqualified, and it shows. Marlowe read them all, every single one. She sat at her desk, tears streaming down her face, and felt like she was drowning. Cole found her in the break room an hour later. She was staring at her phone reading the article for the 10th time. Marlowe. Don't do this to yourself. They're right, Cole. I don't belong here. I'm a waitress. I don't have a degree. I don't have experience. What am I doing? You're helping people. That's what you're doing. But what if I mess up? What if I make things worse? Then you'll learn and do better next time. That's how this works. Marlo shook her head. I should quit before I hurt someone. Cole sat down across from her. You want to know what Forge said when we hired Devin? He said Devin was unqualified too. Former soldier with PTSD and no job history outside the military. People said we were crazy, but Devin became one of our best because he understood struggle. He'd lived it. Marlo wiped her eyes. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. You understand these families because you are these families. That's not a weakness, it's your strength. That evening, Dottie showed up at Marlo's apartment. She'd brought dinner, casserole in a glass dish, still warm. Heard you had a rough day. How did you hear, honey? Everyone's talking about that article. Bunch of garbage, if you ask me. They sat at Marlo's small table. Iris was at Mrs. Calloway's giving them time to talk. I don't know if I can do this, Dottie. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm in over my head. Dottie set down her fork. Let me tell you something. I've known you for 3 years. I've watched you work 2 jobs on no sleep. I've seen you give your last dollar to someone who needed it more. I've seen you keep going when most people would have quit. Marlo stared at her plate. You saved that man's life because you saw a human being, not a threat. That's exactly who should be doing this work. People who see people. But what if I fail, then you fail, and you get back up, just like you always have? Marlo looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm scared. I know you are. But that's how you know it matters. Forge called a meeting the next morning. The whole team, Devin, Nora, Cole, and Marlo. He sat at the head of the table looking tired but determined. I know about the letters, the article, the comments online. He looked directly at Marlo. And I want to be clear, you're not going anywhere. Forge, no, listen to me. When I started this foundation 20 years ago, people said the same things. A biker running a charity, it'll never work. He's unqualified. It's a scam. I heard it all. Marlo hadn't known that. But I kept going because I knew why I was doing it. For Lily. For every family like mine who couldn't get help when they needed it most. He leaned forward. You know why you're doing this? Marlo nodded slowly. For families like mine. For Iris. For everyone who gets forgotten. Then that's all that matters. The rest is noise. That afternoon, a new case landed on Marlo's desk. Edmund Thorne, 62 years old, widowed grandfather raising 2 kids, facing eviction in 10 days. Marlo read the file twice. Then she grabbed her jacket. I'm going to visit him. Cole looked up. You want company? No. I need to do this one myself. Edmund Thorne lived in a rundown apartment complex on the south side. Marlo knocked on Unit 214. The door opened to reveal a tall man with gray hair and weathered hands. Behind him, 2 children watched television. A boy, maybe 9, a girl, 7. Mr. Thorne, I'm Marlo Quinn, from Lily's Legacy. His jaw tightened. I don't take charity. I'm not offering charity. Can I come in? He hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was clean but bare. Hardly any furniture. The kids looked thin. Marlo sat at the small kitchen table. Edmund remained standing, arms crossed. Tell me what happened. My wife died 6 months ago. Cancer. Used up our savings on treatment. Then the factory closed. I've been looking for work, but I'm 62. No one wants to hire me. We're behind on rent. Behind on everything. And the kids. My grandkids. Their parents are gone. I'm all they got. Marlo looked at the children. The boy was protecting his sister, sitting between her and the strangers. The girl clutched a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. What did you do with the factory supervisor? 38 years, ran the whole floor by the end. Marlo had an idea forming, a way to give this man what he needed without crushing his pride. Mr. Thorne, we're building a community center, Quinn House. We need someone with experience to help us plan programs. Someone who knows how to manage people and organize systems. What are you getting at? I'm offering you a job. Community Elder Advisor. $18 an hour. You would help us design job training programs, mentor other families, share your expertise. Edmund stared at her. That's not charity, that's work. That's right. You'd earn every cent. His eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this? Because you deserve dignity, not a handout, a hand up. Edmund sat down slowly. When would I start tomorrow if you want? He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. The kids looked worried, but Marlowe smiled at them. It's okay. Your grandpa's okay. When Edmund looked up, his face was wet, but his eyes were clear. Yes, I want the job. Marlowe stood and shook his hand. Welcome to Lily's legacy. She also arranged for his rent to be covered for 3 months, gave him a food stipend, got the kids enrolled in Quinn House's after-school program that was still in planning. A week later, Vanessa Hale, the reporter who'd written the critical article, showed up at Edmund's apartment with a camera crew. She'd gotten wind of the story. Mr. Thorne, is it true Lily's legacy gave you a job? Edmund stood tall. They didn't give me anything, I earned it. Miss Quinn saw what I had to offer and hired me. That's not charity, that's opportunity. The interview went viral. 2 million views in 3 days. The comments flipped. This is how you help people. Respect to Lily's legacy for doing it right. Marlowe Quinn is the real deal. Public opinion shifted overnight. The criticism faded. The anonymous letters stopped. But the real victory came 2 weeks later when Edmund brought his grandkids to the office. The boy Caleb shook Marlowe's hand. The girl Mia gave her a drawing, a crayon picture of a woman with a heart on her chest. At the bottom in crooked letters, thank you, Miss Marlowe. Marlowe hung it on her office wall, right next to Iris's drawing from home. That evening, Forge called Marlowe to his office. He looked tired but peaceful. There's something I need to tell you about your grandmother. Marlowe's heart stopped. What about her? Forge pulled out an old photo album, opened to a page with a picture of young Lily in a hospital bed. Next to her, a nurse with kind eyes. Marlowe's breath caught. That's Grandma Vera, Rose Vera Quinn, Forge said quietly. I never knew her full name. We just called her Nurse Rose, but I've been looking for her for 25 years. He turned the page. More photos. Vera reading to Lily. Vera holding Lily's hand during treatments. Vera sleeping in a chair beside the hospital bed. When Lily was dying, we couldn't afford overnight care. Your grandmother stayed, off the clock. 3 nights in a row, she sang to Lily when the pain was bad. She told her stories about a little girl named Marlowe who was brave and strong. Marlowe's vision blurred with tears. Lily died 3 days after your grandmother had to quit. She couldn't work without pay anymore. She had you to take care of. I never got to thank her. She died the same way you almost did. Marlowe whispered, alone, on a sidewalk, no one helping. Forge closed his eyes. Then you saved me for her. You stopped because she couldn't be saved. And you're saving families because Lily couldn't be saved. They sat in silence. 2 legacies, 2 debts of kindness, coming full circle after 25 years. She would have loved what you built, Marlowe said. She would have loved what you became. Forge pulled out one more photo, Lily and Vera together, both smiling. He had it framed for you and for Quinn House, so everyone knows where this started. Marlowe held the frame to her chest and cried. Not sad tears, grateful ones. The success with Edmund gave Marlowe confidence. She wasn't perfect, but she was learning. And more importantly, she was making a difference. But the real test was still coming. 2 months into her new job, Forge called her into his office. His face was serious. We got a problem. City Council wants to shut us down. What? Why? Councilman Sterling Hackett. He's calling for an emergency vote to revoke our construction permit for Quinn House. On what grounds? He thinks a biker organization shouldn't be running public services. Says it sets a bad precedent. Marlo felt her stomach drop. When's the vote? 3 days. Can we fight it? We can try. But Hackett's got support. 4 council members out of 7. He's 1 vote away from winning. What do we do? Forge looked at her. We show them what we do. We bring families. Let them tell their stories. The city council meeting was held in a bland government building with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs. Marlowe walked in with 20 families Lily's legacy had helped. Mrs. Patterson, Edmund Thorne and his grandkids, Devin, Nora, others whose lives had changed. Councilman Sterling Hackett sat at the center of the council bench, 64 years old, white hair, expensive suit. He looked like a man who'd spent his career making rules. The meeting came to order. Hackett spoke first. We're here to discuss construction permit 4127 for the proposed Quinn House Community Center. I've called this emergency session because I believe this permit should be revoked. Murmurs through the crowd. Lily's legacy is run by a motorcycle club, the Hells Angels. While I don't dispute they've done some good work, allowing them to operate a public community center sets a dangerous precedent. We have professional organizations that can provide these services. We don't need bikers doing it. Forge stood. With respect, Councilman, we've helped over 3,000 families in 20 years, built 18 community centers, raised $14 million. Our track record speaks for itself, Hackett nodded, and I commend that work. But this isn't about your past. It's about whether this city should endorse a motorcycle club running a public facility. It's not a public facility, it's a nonprofit, privately funded, that operates in our community, serves our residents. We have a responsibility to ensure proper oversight. The council voted to hear public testimony. One by one, families stood and spoke. Mrs. Patterson told them about her medication, how she'd been cutting pills in half until Lily's legacy stepped in. A veteran in a wheelchair talked about the ramp they'd built for him, how he could finally leave his house with dignity. A single mother described how they'd paid for her son's surgery. Each story was 2 minutes. Each one hit hard. Then Edmund Thorne stood. He walked to the microphone with Caleb and Mia beside him. My name is Edmund Thorne. I'm 62 years old. I worked 38 years at Cascade Manufacturing before it closed. My wife died 6 months ago. I was raising my grandkids alone and failing. We were 10 days from eviction. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. Marlo Quinn came to my door. She didn't offer me a handout. She offered me a job. She saw what I had to give and gave me a way to give it with dignity. I'm not a charity case. I'm an employee. I earn my keep, and my grandkids eat dinner every night because of it. Caleb looked up at the council. Please don't take away Quinn House. Miss Marlowe helped us when no one else would. The room was silent. Several council members wiped their eyes. Then it happened. Forge clutched his chest. His face went pale. He grabbed the edge of the table and sat down hard. Cole rushed to his side. Forge. Forge, you okay? Forge's breathing was labored. Not again. Not now. Someone call an ambulance. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked his vitals, gave him oxygen. His color improved slightly. It's angina, stress-induced. Not a full heart attack, but you need to rest. Now, Forge waved them off. Not until this is done. Sir, you need medical attention. Forge looked at the council. Vote, please. Just vote. Hackett stood. We'll recess until Mr. Brennan is stable. No, Forge's voice was firm despite his weakness. Vote now. The room held its breath. Then an elderly woman stood in the back, 86 years old, thin, white hair. She walked slowly to the microphone. My name is Eleanor Hackett. I'm Sterling's mother. Councilman Hackett's face went pale. Mom, you don't need to. Yes, I do. She turned to face the council. 40 years ago, my husband died. Car accident. Left me with a teenage son and no money. Our car broke down on the highway, middle of winter. We were stranded. She paused, her hands trembling on the microphone. A biker stopped. big man, tattoos, scary looking. I was terrified, but he didn't hurt us. He fixed our car, wouldn't take a dime, just said pay it forward. Eleanor looked at her son. I never told you that story, Sterling, because I was ashamed. Shame that I judged that man by his appearance. Ashamed that I almost didn't let him help because of what the neighbors might think. Her voice grew stronger. That biker's name was Tom. I found out later. He died 5 years ago. Cancer. I never got to say thank you. She looked at Forge. But you remind me of him. Same heart, same spirit. Then she turned back to Sterling. Son, I taught you to judge people by their character. But I failed you by hiding my own shame. I let you grow up thinking bikers were dangerous because I was afraid of what people would say. Sterling stood, tears streaming. Mom, don't make my mistakes. Vote your conscience, not your fear. She walked back to her seat. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying. Sterling Hackett stood. He looked at his fellow council members, then at Forge, then at Marlowe. I call for a vote on permit 4127. The vote was called. One by one council members voted. In favor, in favor, in favor. When it came to Sterling, he paused, then quietly said, I abstain. The final tally was 5-2. Quinn House was approved. The room erupted in applause. Forge slumped in his chair, exhausted but smiling. The paramedics insisted on taking him to the hospital for observation. As they wheeled him out, he grabbed Marlowe's hand. You did this. You fought for it. We did this together. At the hospital later that night, Marlowe sat beside Forge's bed. He was resting stable. The doctors said it was stress, not another heart attack. But he needed to slow down. Forge opened his eyes and saw her. You're still here. Someone has to make sure you behave. He smiled weakly. I'm stepping back. Doctor's orders. Forge, no. Not all the way. Just need to delegate more. He pulled papers from the bedside table. Partnership agreement. 50-50 co-directors. You run operations. I'll be chairman. Advisory role. Marlowe stared at the papers. I'm not ready for that. Neither was I 20 years ago. That's how you know it's right. She looked at the man who'd changed her life, who'd seen something in her she hadn't seen in herself. Okay, partners. Partners. They shook hands. And in that moment, Marlowe Quinn, who'd been a waitress counting $8 just 2 months ago, became the co-director of a foundation that would change thousands of lives. The journey was just beginning. 6 months passed like water through fingers. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came change that rippled through the entire neighborhood. The vacant lot 3 blocks from Marlowe's apartment became a construction site. Quinn House was rising from the ground. Steel beams, concrete foundation, walls going up one at a time. But this wasn't a typical construction project. This was community built. Every Saturday, 60 people showed up with hammers and paintbrushes. Neighbors who'd once feared the motorcycles now worked alongside the bikers. Mr. Whitmore, the electrician, who'd shouted at Marlowe that first morning, was now running all the electrical work, donated his time, brought his tools, taught younger men how to wire outlets and run conduit. Mrs. Calloway set up a folding table under a tent and cooked meals for the workers. Sandwiches, soup, coffee that never ran out. She'd recruited 3 other women from the building. They worked in shifts, making sure no one went hungry. Paige, the young mother who'd locked her kids inside when the motorcycles arrived, now brought her children every weekend. They painted walls, carried supplies. The 7-year-old girl could hammer a nail straighter than most adults. Bikers provided security. Not the threatening kind, the watchful kind. They made sure equipment didn't get stolen. Made sure everyone stayed safe. Made sure the work kept moving forward. Iris painted too. She had her own small brush in a section of interior wall designated just for kids. Handprints in different colors. Names written in crooked letters. A mural of hope created by the smallest hands. Marlowe was there every Saturday, but she was different now. stronger, more confident. She'd found her voice in those 6 months. During the week, she ran Lily's legacy operations, training new coordinators, reviewing cases, visiting families, making decisions that affected hundreds of lives. The imposter syndrome hadn't disappeared completely, but it had quieted to a whisper she could ignore. She spoke at universities now, guest lectures on community outreach, nonprofit management. The students would ask how someone without a degree ended up running a foundation. She'd tell them the truth. Experience matters more than credentials when you're trying to help people who've lived what you've lived. The media loved her story. The waitress who saved a biker and changed a community. She'd been on local news, national news, a podcast with 2 million listeners. Each time she redirected the attention back to the families, back to the work. This isn't about me. It's about what's possible when people choose kindness over fear. But not everyone had moved on from the past. Vanessa Hale, the reporter who'd written the critical article questioning Marlowe's qualifications, showed up at the Lily's Legacy office on a Tuesday afternoon. Marlowe was reviewing grant applications when Cole knocked on her door. "Someone here to see you. Who, Vanessa Hale?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Tell her I'm busy. She said it's important, and she looks like she's been crying." Marlowe sighed. "Fine, send her in." Vanessa walked in with red eyes and a folder clutched to her chest. She was 42, professional, always put together. But today she looked broken. "Thank you for seeing me. Make it quick. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Vanessa sat down. "I came to apologize. For the article, for everything." Marlowe leaned back in her chair. "Little late for that." "I know, but I need you to understand something. Councilman Hackett paid me to write that article." Marlowe's expression didn't change. "I know." Vanessa looked up surprised. "You knew, found out a month ago. Figured it didn't matter anymore." "It matters to me." Vanessa opened the folder. "I've been investigating Hackett since the council vote. His corruption, his backroom deals. I have evidence, enough to end his career." She slid papers across the desk. Bank records, emails, a pattern of bribes and kickbacks spanning 5 years. "I'm running the story this week. Full expose. But I wanted you to see it first, and I wanted to ask if you'd let me write a follow-up. The real story, about what you've built here." Marlowe studied the woman across from her, saw genuine remorse, genuine desire to make things right. "Why now?" "Because I was wrong, and because I spent 6 months watching what you do. I followed the families you helped, interviewed them. Every single one said the same thing. Marlowe Quinn saw us, really saw us." Vanessa's voice broke. "I haven't seen people in years. I've seen stories, angles, clicks. But you reminded me what real journalism is supposed to do." Marlowe was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, you can write the story, but I have conditions. Anything. Focus on the families, not me, and donate your fee to Lily's Legacy." Vanessa smiled through tears. "Deal." The story ran the following Sunday. Front page. Councilman Sterling Hackett's corruption exposed. His resignation followed within 48 hours. His political career was over. But the real impact came from the follow-up piece Vanessa wrote. A documentary-style article titled "The $8 Promise." It chronicled Marlowe's journey from that gas station night to running a foundation that had helped 3,200 families. The article went viral, shared millions of times. Networks wanted to interview Marlowe. Production companies wanted to option her story. She turned them all down except one, a documentary filmmaker from Seattle, a woman named Christina Bell who'd lost her own mother to poverty. She wanted to tell the story right, with dignity, with truth. "I don't want to exploit you," Christina said over coffee. "I want to show what's possible. I want other communities to see what you've built and know they can build it too." Marlowe agreed. The camera started following her in month 7. By month 8, Quinn House was nearly finished. The grand opening was scheduled for late September. A ribbon-cutting ceremony, tours, a celebration of everything the community had built together. Marlowe stood in the empty building the night before opening. The medical clinic was ready, examination rooms, supplies, a doctor who'd volunteered to work 2 days a week. The job training center had computers, desks, a whiteboard covered in lesson plans. The after-school program space was painted bright yellow, tables and chairs sized for children, books on shelves, art supplies in bins, a safe place for kids like Iris to go when their parents worked late. The food bank was stocked, shelves of canned goods, fresh produce donated by local farms, dignity, not handouts. People could come and take what they needed without shame. Edmund Thorne walked in holding a clipboard. He'd become the facility manager, full-time, salary and benefits. He ran the place like the factory floor he'd supervised for 38 years. Efficient, organized, with compassion. Everything ready for tomorrow. As ready as it'll ever be, Edmund said. You nervous? Terrified. He smiled. Good. Means you care. Outside, Ford sat on his motorcycle watching the building. He looked healthier now. The doctors had adjusted his medications. Reduced his stress, he'd stepped back from daily operations but remained chairman of the board. Advisory, supportive, always there when needed. Cole walked over and leaned against the bike. Big day tomorrow. 20 years in the making. You think Lily would be proud? Forge's eyes glistened. I know she would be. They sat in comfortable silence. Two men who'd built something that mattered. Something that would outlive them both. The next morning dawned clear and bright. September sunshine. Temperature perfect. Like the universe was cooperating. By 10 a.m., the street was packed. 700 people, maybe more. Neighbors, families, city officials, media crews. Bikers lined up in formation, their motorcycles gleaming. The mayor stood at a podium. She'd replaced Hackett in a special election. A black woman in her 50s named Angela Morrison. She believed in second chances, in community power. Today we celebrate more than a building. We celebrate what happens when people see each other's humanity, when they choose to help instead of judge. Quinn House is proof that change is possible, that kindness wins. Applause rippled through the crowd. Forge spoke next, kept it brief, thanked the volunteers, thanked the neighbors, thanked Marlowe for giving him a reason to keep fighting. Then Marlowe stood at the podium with Iris beside her. Her daughter wore a new dress, yellow with white flowers. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a braid. Marlowe looked out at the sea of faces, people she'd helped, people who'd helped her, people who'd transformed from strangers into family. 1 year ago, I was a waitress with $8 to my name. I spent those $8 on a dying man because my grandmother taught me that kindness is the only debt worth carrying. She paused, her voice steady but full of emotion. What I didn't know was that kindness multiplies. Every act of compassion creates ripples. Forge built Lily's legacy because a nurse showed his daughter kindness. That nurse was my grandmother. And now, 25 years later, here we are, building something together that will help thousands more. She looked down at Iris. My daughter will grow up knowing that hard times don't define you. That community matters. That $8 spent on a stranger can change the world. The crowd erupted in applause. Marlowe and Iris cut the ribbon together. Red fabric falling away, doors opening wide. People poured inside. Tours of the medical clinic, the job training center, the food bank, the after-school program where Iris would spend her afternoons. In the back, there was a garden, small but carefully tended, trees planted in memory, benches for sitting, a fountain with water trickling over smooth stones. At the center stood a bronze plaque, two photos embedded in the metal, one of a little girl with bright eyes and a huge smile. Lily Brennan, age 7, beside her a woman in nurse's scrubs. Vera Quinn, age 43. Below the photos an inscription, Two angels who taught us kindness has no expiration date. In memory of Lily Brennan and Vera Quinn, their legacy lives in every life we touch. Marlo stood in front of it, tears streaming down her face. Forge appeared beside her. He didn't say anything, just stood there, his hand on her shoulder, both of them mourning and celebrating at once. Later, families shared their stories, quick testimonials, 2 minutes each, but each one powerful. Mrs. Patterson, now 81, walked without assistance. Her heart medication was covered for life. She volunteered at the food bank twice a week. Devin, the veteran, had his own apartment now. A chiboom. Stability. He mentored other veterans through Lily's legacy, helped them navigate the system he had once been lost in. Nora, the single mother who'd escaped abuse, had adopted 2 foster children. Her house was full of love and laughter. She ran support groups for other survivors. A teenage girl named Maya stood at the microphone, 16 years old, shy but determined. A year ago, I didn't think I'd go to college. My family couldn't afford it. But Lily's Legacy's after-school program helped me get a scholarship. Full ride to Portland State. I'm going to study medicine. She looked directly at Marlo. Because of you, I get to become what I always dreamed, a doctor, so I can help people the way you helped me. Marlo wiped her eyes. The cycle continues. Help given, help returned, help passed forward. As the celebration wound down, Marlo slipped away. She got in her car, the one the bikers had fixed a year ago, and drove across town. Sunset gas station looked the same. Flickering fluorescent lights, cracked pavement, a few cars at the pumps. She parked and sat for a moment, remembering that night. The fear, the choice, the $8. She got out and walked inside. The attendant behind the counter was new. Young guy, maybe 25. He looked up from his phone. Help you? No, just passing through. Marlo walked to the spot where Forge had collapsed. Someone had placed a small plaque on the wall. Brass, simple. Here, a small act of kindness changed everything. Lily's legacy. She hadn't known about this. Someone had done it without telling her. Probably Forge, or Cole, or one of the 100 bikers who'd become family. She heard a voice behind her. I remember you. Marlo turned. Derek, the gas station attendant from that night. Older now, grayer, but the same face. You told me to walk away, she said quietly. I did, and I was wrong. He walked closer, nervous. I've been following your story, what you built, what you've done. I've thought about that night 1,000 times. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. A volunteer application for Quinn House, already filled out. I want to make up for it, if you'll let me. Marlo looked at the application. Maintenance and facilities, evening shifts. He'd work around his day job. She met his eyes. What made you change your mind? I saw what you did with nothing, made me realize I've been doing nothing with something. Got a job, got health, got time. Been wasting all three, feeling sorry for myself. Marlo took the application. Welcome to the team, Derek. His shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Actually, I do. I was you a year ago. Lost, scared, thinking I had nothing to offer. Someone gave me a chance. Now I'm passing it on. As she drove home that evening, Marlo thought about the circle, how help flows in patterns, how kindness creates more kindness, how one choice ripples outward in ways you can never predict. That night, Iris was already asleep when Marlo got home. Mrs. Calloway had watched her during the celebration aftermath. The older woman had become more than a neighbor, more like a grandmother Iris had never had. Marlo sat at her table, the same table where she'd counted $8 a year ago, the same apartment though it was furnished now, comfortable, safe, no more holes in the ceiling, no more broken appliances, no more fear. She pulled out her journal, the ritual she'd maintained every night for 20 years. 3 things she was grateful for. 1, Iris is healthy, safe, and thriving. 2, Quinn House opened today. 53 families already signed up for services. 3. Tomorrow we break ground on Lily's Legacy Center #2 in Seattle. She closed the journal and looked at the photo on her nightstand. Grandmother Vera, young and smiling in her nurse's uniform. Marlo picked it up and held it to her chest. I paid your debt, Grandma, and I'll keep paying it. The weekend after the grand opening, Marlo took Iris to Riverside Cemetery. It was a small place on the edge of Portland. Old trees, weathered headstones, quiet except for birdsong. Vera Quinn's grave was under an oak tree. The headstone was simple. Name, dates, beloved grandmother and nurse. Marlo had brought flowers, white roses, Vera's favorite, and Iris helped her arrange them in the built-in vase. Who was she, Mommy? Your great-grandmother, the kindest person I ever knew. Did she help people like you do? Marlo smiled. She taught me how. From her bag, she pulled out a photo, the one from the Quinn House Memorial Garden. Lily and Vera together. Young Lily in a hospital bed, Vera beside her holding her hand. Marlo had it enlarged and framed. She propped it against the headstone. Grandma, this is Lily, the little girl you stayed with 25 years ago. You probably don't remember her. You helped so many people, but she remembered you, and her father never forgot. Iris looked at the photo. She was pretty. She was, and she was brave, just like you. Marlo knelt in the grass. Iris sat beside her. Everything I've built started with you. The kindness you showed, the example you set. You died alone on a sidewalk, and I swore I'd never let that happen to anyone else. I'd never walk past someone who needed help. Her voice broke. You saved Lily's spirit. I saved her father. And together we're saving thousands more. Your kindness didn't die with you, Grandma. It multiplied. Iris leaned against her mother. Marlo wrapped her arm around her daughter. I miss you every day, but I feel you in the work. In every family we help, in every choice I make, you're still here, still teaching me. They sat in silence for a while. The wind moved through the oak tree. Somewhere a cardinal sang. Finally, Marlo stood. She kissed her fingers and pressed them to the headstone. Rest well, Grandma. I've got it from here. As they walked back to the car, Iris asked Will, you tell me stories about her. Every one I can remember. That evening, Forge visited Marlo's apartment. He brought dinner, Chinese takeout, enough for 3 people, even though he'd only eat a little. The heart medication affected his appetite. They sat at the table, Iris between them using chopsticks she barely knew how to hold. Ford showed her the right way. Patient, gentle. After dinner, Iris went to her room to read. Marlo and Forge moved to the small living room. He sat on the couch that Lily's legacy had given her a year ago. How you holding up? Tired, happy, overwhelmed, all at once. Sounds about right. Forge pulled an envelope from his jacket. Inside, architectural plans. What's this Lily's Legacy Center #3? Tacoma. We got the funding, breaking ground in January. Marlo stared at those plans. 3 centers, 3,000 families helped, and growing. We're also opening 2 more after that. Spokane and Eugene. Cole's going to run Tacoma. Devin's taking Eugene. We need you to hire coordinators for Spokane. This is moving so fast. It's been 20 years in the making. Now we're finally getting the momentum we need. He stood and walked to the window, looked out at the street where 100 motorcycles had arrived a year ago. You know what I think about sometimes? What would have happened if you'd walked past me that night? Marlo joined him at the window. I couldn't have, I know, but most people would have, and I'd be dead. Lily's legacy would have died with me. None of this would exist. He turned to face her. You didn't just save my life. You saved everything I'd built, everything I dreamed. You're the answer to a prayer I didn't even know I was praying. Marlo's eyes filled with tears. You gave me purpose, a way to make my grandmother's death mean something, a way to turn pain into power. They stood together, 2 people bound by circumstance and choice, by $8 and a heart attack, by legacy and loss. We make a good team, Forge said. The best. 3 months later in December, Christina Bell's documentary premiered, The $8 Promise. It played at film festivals, won awards, distributed on streaming platforms. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured into Lily's legacy, $50,000 in the first week, $100,000 by the end of the month, enough to fund 2 more centers and hire 10 more coordinators. Other cities started reaching out. Can you help us replicate this model? We want to build our own Quinn House. Marlowe and Forge created a blueprint, a step-by-step guide for community organizations wanting to do similar work. They offered it for free. No licensing fees, no restrictions. Take what we've built and make it your own. That was their only requirement. By the time Iris turned 8, there were 12 Lily's Legacy Centers across 5 states. 450 families helped in the first year alone. The number kept growing. Marlowe was promoted to executive director. Forge remained chairman, but stepped back even further. His health was stable but fragile. He spent his time mentoring new directors, visiting centers, being the face of the movement without carrying the weight. One evening in late spring, Marlowe was driving home from a site visit in Salem. It was almost 9 p.m. She was tired, the kind of tired that comes from a full day of meaningful work. She stopped at a gas station, not Sunset, a different one on the outskirts of Portland. As she was filling up, she saw a young woman sitting on the curb, white, maybe 23, crying into her hands. Marlowe finished pumping and walked over. You okay? The woman looked up, red eyes, mascara streaked down her face. My car broke down. I don't have money for a tow. I'm supposed to pick up my baby from daycare and I'm already an hour late. Marlowe knew this feeling, the desperation, the math that doesn't work, the impossible choices. She pulled out her wallet, took out a $20 bill. Here, get your car towed. The woman stared at the money. I can't take this. You're not taking it. You're receiving it. There's a difference. But I don't even know you. You don't have to. Marlowe pulled out a card. Lily's Legacy, the crown with wings logo embossed on quality paper. If you need more help, call this number. We can connect you with resources, job training, childcare assistance, whatever you need. The woman took the card with shaking hands. How do I repay you? Marlowe smiled. You don't repay me, you pass it forward. When you're back on your feet, you help the next person. That's how this works. The woman started crying again, but different tears, relief, hope. Thank you. I won't forget this. I know you won't. Marlowe got in her car and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she watched the young woman on the phone, probably calling the daycare, probably explaining she'd be there soon. One more person helped, one more link in an endless chain of kindness. When she got home, Iris was at the table doing homework. 8 years old now, smart, confident, healthy. Her asthma was managed, her inhaler always stocked. No more rationing, no more fear. How was your day, mommy good baby? Helped a lot of people. Did you save anyone? Marlowe thought about the young mother at the gas station. Maybe, in a way. She sat down beside her daughter. Let me ask you something. If you could go back in time, would you want me to keep that $8 and not help? Mr. Forge, Iris looked up from her math homework, confused. But then, we wouldn't have this. She gestured around the apartment. The nice furniture, the full fridge, Quinn House, all the families we help. Marlowe smiled. That's right. So why would we want to go back? Just checking, making sure you understand. Iris went back to her homework. Marlowe watched her daughter, this bright light in her life, and felt overwhelming gratitude. One choice, $8, a dying man, and everything changed. Later that night, Marlowe opened her journal, the same one she'd kept for 20 years, pages filled with gratitude. With struggle, with hope. She wrote 1, Iris is thriving, honor student, kind heart, everything I dreamed she could be. 2, Lily's Legacy helped 62 families this month, 12 centers operating, More coming. 3. I met a young mother tonight at a gas station. Gave her $20 and a card. The circle continues. She closed the journal and looked at the photos on her wall. Grandmother Vera, Lily Brennan, Forge on his motorcycle, Quinn House at the grand opening, families they'd helped, smiling faces, transformed lives. This was legacy, not money, not fame, but impact that ripples forward through time, kindness that multiplies with each person it touches. Marlo turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new families, new challenges, new opportunities to help, and she'd be ready because she'd learned the most important lesson. You're never too poor to help someone, never too broken to make a difference, never too small to change the world. Sometimes all it takes is $8 and the courage to stop when everyone else walks by. The rest takes care of itself. 2 years after Quinn House opened, Marlo stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for Lily's Legacy Center number 15. Boise, Idaho, a crowd of 200 people, local officials, media, families waiting for help. Forge was there looking frail but happy, 54 now, white beard showing more gray, still riding his motorcycle though the doctor said he shouldn't. Marlo gave the speech, told the story. Not for herself, but so others would understand what's possible. 2 years ago, I was a waitress counting $8. Today, we've helped over 4,000 families across 8 states. We've built 15 community centers. We've proven that kindness isn't weakness, it's power. She paused, looking out at the crowd. But this didn't start with me. It started with a grandmother who showed compassion to a dying child, with a father who turned grief into purpose, with a community that chose unity over fear, with every person who decided to help instead of judge. The crowd applauded, shovels turned dirt, foundation poured, another center beginning its journey from dream to reality. That evening, Marlo drove to Riverside Cemetery. She brought Iris, brought flowers, brought photos of everything they'd built. She stood at Vera's grave and showed her grandmother's headstone the pictures. Quinn House filled with families, children in the after-school program, seniors getting medical care, veterans finding housing. Look what you started, Grandma. Look what your kindness grew into. Iris placed her hand on the headstone. I wish I could have met her. You carry her with you, baby. Every kind thing you do, every person you help, that's her living through you. They sat in the grass as the sun set, pink and orange sky, birds settling in for night. Peace. Marlo closed her eyes and felt her grandmother's presence, not in some supernatural way, but in the legacy that continued, in the values that persisted, in the work that mattered. Thank you for teaching me, for showing me, for being the kind of person worth becoming. When they got home, there was a package waiting from Christina Bell, the documentary filmmaker. Inside, a USB drive and a note. Marlo, the documentary just won Best Short at Sundance. But more importantly, it's inspired 3 new Lily's Legacy Centers to open in communities that saw the film. Your story is changing the world. Keep fighting. Christina Marlowe held the note and smiled. The ripples continue, each wave creating new waves, endless, unstoppable. She plugged in the USB drive, a video file. She pressed play. It was testimonials, hundreds of them, from families across the country who'd been helped by Lily's legacy. 1-minute clips, people saying thank you, sharing their stories, explaining what the help meant. An elderly man in Montana, a single mother in Colorado, a veteran in Arizona, a grandmother in Washington, on and on, face after face, life after life. Marlo watched them all. 2 hours of gratitude, 2 hours of impact made visible. When it ended, she sat in silence. Iris had fallen asleep on the couch beside her. Marlo covered her daughter with a blanket and looked around their home. This wasn't the apartment they'd started in. They'd moved last year. A small house, 2 bedrooms, a yard. nothing fancy but theirs. On the mantel sat the photo of Vera and Lily, the plaque from Quinn House, a framed dollar bill, the first dollar Marlowe had earned at Lily's legacy. And beside it, a photo from the grand opening, Marlowe and Forge cutting the ribbon, Iris between them, all three smiling. A family forged not by blood, but by choice and circumstance and shared purpose. Marlowe picked up her journal. Final entry for the night. 1. 4,000 families helped. 15 centers open. More lives changed than I can count. 2. Iris is kind and compassionate, growing into someone who will change the world in her own way. 3. I found my purpose, and it found me, all because I couldn't walk away from a dying man. She closed the journal, set it on the table, and whispered into the quiet house. $8. One choice. Everything. 3 years after that night at the gas station, Marlowe received a call. Forge was in the hospital. Heart failure. Not acute like before, but chronic. Progressive. The doctors gave him 6 months. Maybe a year if he was lucky. Marlowe rushed to the hospital. Cole was already there. Devin, Nora, the whole team. Forge looked small in the hospital bed. Tubes and monitors, but his eyes were clear. His smile was real. Don't look so sad. I've had more time than I deserved. More than Lily got. Marlowe sat beside him. We're not done yet. There's more to build. You'll build it. With or without me. That's the point. Over the next 6 months, Forge fought. Good days and bad days, 3 days. He still came to the office when he could. Still mentored new directors. Still rode his motorcycle on sunny afternoons, Cole following close behind to make sure he got home safe. But slowly, inevitably, the disease won. He died on a Tuesday morning in early October. Peacefully, Cole and Marlowe beside him. His last words were simple. Tell them it was worth it. Every second. The funeral was massive. 300 bikers, hundreds of families, people whose lives he'd changed. The mayor spoke. Devin spoke. Mrs. Patterson, now 83, spoke through tears. But it was Marlowe who gave the eulogy. She stood at the podium looking out at the sea of faces. Garrett Forge Brennan was a lot of things. A father who lost his daughter too soon. A biker who scared people with his appearance. A man who turned grief into purpose. She paused. But to me, he was the person who saw potential when everyone else saw a waitress. Who gave me a chance when I had nothing. Who taught me that kindness isn't soft. It's the hardest, strongest thing we can choose. Her voice broke. 2.5 years ago, I spent my last $8 to save his life. Today, I stand here because he spent the rest of his life saving mine. The service ended. The bikers rode in formation to Riverside Cemetery. Forge was buried 3 rows from Vera's grave, under the same oak tree. Marlowe stayed after everyone left, Iris beside her. She knelt at the fresh grave. The headstone wouldn't arrive for weeks, but a temporary marker sat in the dirt. Garrett Forge, Brennan beloved, father friend and builder of legacies. He saw people, not stereotypes. Marlowe pulled out the photo of Vera and Lily, placed it against the marker. You're with them now. With Lily. Tell her we kept the promise. Tell Grandma Vera, too. She stood, looked at the 2 graves, the nurse who started the cycle, the biker who continued it, and Marlowe standing between them carrying it forward. 6 months after Forge died, Marlowe stood at the ribbon cutting for Lily's Legacy Center number 23. Denver, Colorado, the largest center yet. Medical clinic job, training housing assistants, mental health services. Cole ran it. He'd stepped down from his traveling role to put down roots, found purpose in the place just like Marcia had. The crowd was smaller than Quinn House had been, more intimate, but the energy was the same. A young woman approached Marlowe after the ceremony. White, early 20s, nervous. Miss Quinn, and I wanted to thank you. Marlowe smiled. What for? 5 years ago, you helped my mom at a gas station. Stranded car. Baby at daycare. Marlo remembered. The young mother, crying on the curb. That was your mom. The woman nodded. She told me that story 100 times. How a stranger gave her $20 and a card. How that card led to a job training program. How she got certified as a medical assistant. How our life changed. Where is she now? Works at Quinn House, Portland Clinic. She says every time she helps someone, she thinks of you. Marlo felt tears forming. Tell her I remember, and I'm proud of her. After the ceremony, Marlo drove to a different cemetery, this one in Denver. She had made this trip every few months since Forge died. His grave had a proper headstone now. Black granite, photos embedded, Forge on his motorcycle, Lily as a child. Marlo sat on the grass, pulled out her journal. Hey, just finished number 23. Cole's doing great. Devin opened number 19 in Eugene last month. We're at 5,000 families helped now. 12 states. She traced the letters of his name. Iris starts high school next year. Wants to be a doctor. Says she wants to help people like we do. I think you'd like that. A breeze moved through the cemetery. Leaves rustled. I still carry $8. New bills, but 8 of them. In my wallet. Never spend them. They remind me where I came from. What one choice can do. She stood. Placed fresh flowers. Rest well. We've got it from here. As Marlo drove back to Portland that evening, she thought about legacy. About how it doesn't end with death. How it multiplies with each person who carries it forward. Forge had built Lily's legacy for his daughter. Vera had helped Lily without knowing the ripples it would create. Marlo had stopped for a dying stranger because she couldn't walk past suffering. And now 23 centers, 5,000 families, hundreds of volunteers, thousands of small acts of kindness, creating waves that would continue long after all of them were gone. That night, Iris was doing homework at the kitchen table. 10 years old now, reading above grade level, kind to everyone. Mommy, can I ask you something? Of course, baby. Do you ever regret it? Using that $8, Marlo sat down beside her. Every day, I'm grateful I did. But regret? Never. Even though it was scary, especially because it was scary, the best things we do are usually the hardest. Iris thought about that. I want to be like you when I grow up. Marlo smiled. You already are. Later, after Iris went to bed, Marlo pulled out her journal, the ritual that had carried her through poverty, loss, triumph, and grief. 1, Iris is healthy, brilliant, and kind. Everything I hope for and more. 2, 23 centers, 5,000 families. The work continues. 3, I spent $8 2.5 years ago. Best investment I ever made. She closed the journal, looked at the photo on her wall. Vera, Lily, and Forge together now. A composite she'd had made. 3 people who'd never met in life united in legacy. Tomorrow would bring new families, new challenges, new opportunities. And Marlo would be ready because she carried them with her. Their lessons, their love, their belief that one person with nothing but compassion and courage can change everything. $8, one choice, 1,000 ripples. The story continues.